The room went so quiet I could hear the ice clink inside a glass. 400 people, maybe more, all dressed up, all smiling a second ago, now staring straight at me like I had just dropped a plate and shattered it in the middle of the dance floor. My daughter, Mia, stood at the front of the ballroom in her white wedding dress, her hands shaking around her bouquet. Her new husband, Caleb, looked like he wanted to speak but could not find air. And Caleb's father, Richard Harlan, stood right beside the microphone, holding it like a weapon. He had just insulted me loudly, in front of everyone. Not a small insult, not a joke that landed wrong, he went for my whole life. He smiled at the crowd and said, "Let's all give a polite clap to Mia's mother, who did her best, even though she didn't have much to offer. No husband, no family name, no real background, just hard times and a hard attitude." A few people laughed, nervous and confused. Then he added, "Mia is lucky she married into a real family now." Mia's face turned red like she was burning inside. Her eyes filled with tears. She tried to blink away, but they kept coming. And for a second, I felt like I was not in this fancy room at all. I was back in my little kitchen years ago, counting dollars, trying to stretch a small paycheck, telling Mia, "We're okay, baby, we're okay," even when I wasn't sure we were. Except this time I was not alone in a small kitchen. This time I was standing in the middle of a ballroom with chandeliers above my head, and every person in the room had just watched someone try to turn me into a joke. Richard lifted the microphone again, like he wasn't done. "You know," he continued, "some people should sit quietly and be grateful they were invited." That was when something in me clicked into place. I stood up slowly. My chair scraped the floor, loud enough to cut through the silence. I could feel my heart thudding, but my voice was steady. I looked straight at Richard Harlan and said, clear and calm, "Do you even know who I am?" His smile froze. His face went pale, like all the blood ran out at once. His eyes flicked to my hands, then to my face, then to the big gold watch on his own wrist, like he suddenly forgot what time it was. He swallowed hard. And I knew right then he did know. He just never expected to see me here. Never expected me to stand up. Never expected me to speak. Because people like Richard Harlan only feel brave when they think the other person has no power. He stared at me like he had seen a ghost. And I stood there, not moving, not yelling, not shaking. Just waiting. Because this wedding was not the first time Richard Harlan tried to hurt someone with his words. But it was going to be the last time he got away with it. Now, before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand something. I did raise my daughter alone. And I did it with tired hands, sleepless nights, and a kind of stubborn love that never quit. I am a grandma now, yes, but when Mia was little, I was a young mother with no safety net. Mia's father left before Mia could even talk in full sentences. He told me he was not ready and that he needed to find himself. I remember holding Mia on my hip while he packed a bag. Mia reached for him and said, "Daddy," like it was a simple question. He didn't answer. He walked out and the door shut, and that sound stayed inside my head for years. After that, it was me and Mia. I worked 2 jobs at one point. I cleaned offices early in the morning, then I worked afternoons at a small welding shop that needed an extra hand. People hear welding and think it's just sparks and metal, but it's also precision, patience and pride. Some days I came home with my arms aching and my clothes smelling like smoke and steel. Mia would run to me anyway. She didn't care what I smelled like. She cared that I showed up. I taught her how to do homework at the kitchen table. I taught her how to be kind, but also how to stand up straight. I taught her that your name matters, even if the world pretends it doesn't. When she was 10, she once asked me, "Mom, why don't we have as much as other people?" I looked at her and said, "We have enough, and we have each other, and you never let anyone make you feel small, okay?" She nodded like she understood, but kids don't fully understand until life tests them. And life tested her the day she met Caleb. Caleb was polite, soft-spoken, the kind of boy who held doors and said "yes, ma'am" without acting like it hurt him. He loved Mia in a way that looked gentle and real. When Mia brought him home for dinner, he brought flowers, not expensive ones, just simple daisies. He said, "Ms. Evelyn, I'm grateful to meet you. Mia talks about you like you're her hero." I felt my throat tighten, but I smiled and said, "Well, she's mine too." Caleb's mother had passed away when he was younger, so it was mostly him and his father. And that was my first warning. Because when someone only has one parent left, and that parent is controlling, it changes them. Caleb tried to be his own person, but Richard Harlan still held the leash. The first time I met Richard, it was at a restaurant, a nice one, meaning the kind where you feel like you're supposed to whisper. Richard showed up 10 minutes late and acted like we should be thankful. He shook Caleb's hand like he was testing his grip. Then he looked at Mia and smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. When Richard finally looked at me, he scanned me from head to toe like he was pricing an item on a shelf. Then he said, "So you're Mia's mother?" I said, "Yes, I am." He nodded slowly and said, "And you raised her alone, that must have been difficult." He didn't say it kindly. He said it like it was something embarrassing. I kept my smile and said, "It was work, but she's worth it." He leaned back and said, "Well, I hope she appreciates what our family can offer. Caleb will have responsibilities, we have standards." Mia squeezed my hand under the table. I squeezed back. That night when we got home, Mia said, "Mom, I'm sorry, he's just like that." I said, "Baby, you never apologize for someone else's bad manners." Over the months, Richard made little comments. Small stabs. He'd say things like, "Mia, you've never been around real wealth before, have you?" with a laugh like it was harmless. Or he'd say, "Evelyn, do you have someone helping you pick out your dress for the engagement party?" like I couldn't be trusted to dress myself. And each time Mia would look at me with that worried face, like she was scared I would explode. But I didn't. Not because I was weak. Because I was watching. I was listening. And I was learning what Richard Harlan cared about most. Image. Control. And hiding the truth. The truth is, I had a past Richard didn't know about. Or maybe he did know in a vague way, and he assumed it could never touch him. Because people like Richard think they are too high up for consequences. But I knew something. Something real. Something that could change everything for Mia and Caleb if it came out at the wrong time. I didn't want to ruin their love story. I wanted to protect it. So I kept quiet, even when Richard tried to turn me into a background character in my own daughter's life. Then, 3 weeks before the wedding, Mia came to my house with her eyes puffy like she had been crying. She sat at my kitchen table, the same kitchen table where she used to do spelling words, and she whispered, "Mom, I think Richard hates you." I poured her tea and said, "It's not about me." She shook her head. "He keeps saying things, he keeps asking Caleb if he's sure, like I'm not good enough because I didn't come from money." I reached across the table and took her hands. "Mia," I said, "you are good enough, you are more than enough." Her voice broke. "Then why does it feel like I'm walking into a trap?" That word hit me hard. Trap. Because my instincts, the ones that kept me and Mia alive for years, had been buzzing quietly in the background. And now they were screaming. I wanted to tell her everything right then. I wanted to tell her what I knew about Richard. What I knew about the way he built his perfect life. What I knew about the kind of man he really was when no one was watching. But Mia looked so hopeful at the same time. Hopeful that love would win. Hopeful that her wedding day would be safe. So I said, "Let's do this the right way. We don't panic, we don't guess. We stay calm and we stay smart." Mia nodded, wiping her eyes. And right there in that calm moment, I want to say something to anyone listening, especially if you've ever felt small or talked over, if you've ever been treated like you didn't matter, please don't just swallow it. If this story is pulling at you, take a second to hit like. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from, because I read those, and it reminds people they're not alone. And if you want more stories where truth shows up right on time, subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Because what happened next at that wedding was not luck. It was not magic. It was the result of years of patience, love, and me refusing to let anyone crush my daughter. Now back to the wedding day. The ballroom smelled like roses and expensive food. Mia looked beautiful. Caleb looked like he couldn't believe his life was real. Everything was supposed to be perfect. And for a while it was. Then came the speeches. Caleb spoke first. He talked about Mia's kindness, her strength, her laugh. He thanked me for raising her. His voice shook when he said, Mia's mom taught her how to stand tall, and that's what I love about her. People clapped. Mia squeezed Caleb's hand. My heart swelled. Then Richard stood up. He took the microphone with a practiced smile, like a man who loved being watched. He started with jokes. People laughed. He talked about Caleb as a little boy. People smiled. And then, like a snake sliding out of tall grass, he turned toward me. He said my name slowly, like it tasted wrong. Evelyn, he said, you must be very proud. I nodded politely. And then he did it. He insulted me, then insulted my daughter, then insulted my entire life right there in front of everyone, like he wanted to mark his territory. And now we are back to the moment where I stood up and asked, do you even know who I am? Richard's face was pale. His hand tightened around the microphone. And in that frozen second I saw something else. At the far end of the room, near the doors, the wedding coordinator was whispering urgently to a man in a dark suit. The man in the dark suit looked straight at me. Then he looked at Richard. Then he started walking toward the front fast. Richard noticed him too. His eyes went wide. And he whispered, so quietly only the people closest could hear, no, no, not here. I kept my eyes on him and said, still calm, oh yes, here. Because whatever Richard Harlan was hiding, it had finally found him. And it was about to crash into this wedding like a storm. The man in the dark suit kept walking fast, like he had a destination, and nothing in this room could stop him. His shoes barely made a sound on the carpet, but somehow the whole room felt louder with every step he took. Richard Harlan's fingers tightened around the microphone so hard his knuckles turned white. His throat moved like he was swallowing a rock. Caleb leaned toward his father and whispered, Dad, what's going on? Richard didn't answer. He couldn't, because he was staring at that man like he was staring at the end of his life. Mia looked at me, eyes wide and wet. Her lips trembled. Mom, she whispered, what did you mean? Why did you say that? I held her gaze and gave her the smallest nod, the kind that says, stay with me, baby. I've got you. The man in the suit reached the front row. The wedding coordinator tried to block him with her hands raised, whispering, Sir, please, you can't. He didn't push her. He didn't yell. He just leaned in and said something low and firm, and she moved out of the way like she had just been reminded of a rule she could not break. He walked right up to Richard. Then right there in front of my daughter's cake, in front of the flowers, in front of 400 guests, he spoke. Richard Harlan, he said clear and calm, we need a word now. Richard's mouth opened and closed. He managed a laugh that sounded like it hurt. This is a private event, Richard said, trying to sound in control. You're interrupting my son's wedding. The man in the suit didn't blink. Then you should have handled your business before today, he replied. A wave of whispers rippled through the room. People leaned toward each other like the air itself had turned into gossip. Caleb stepped forward, voice shaking. Sir, who are you? The man glanced at Caleb, his expression softening a little. Not here to hurt you, he said. I'm here for your father. Richard's face twitched. And I knew he was about to do what men like him always do. He was going to lie. So I spoke first, steady as a bell. Richard, I said, you were brave when you thought I was nobody. Keep that same energy now. He turned toward me, eyes burning. You, he hissed, forgetting the microphone for a second. You did this. I didn't flinch. No, I said. You did this years ago. You just hoped it would never catch up. Mia's voice cracked. Mom, what is he talking about? I took a breath, because this was the moment where silence stops protecting anyone. This was the moment where silence becomes betrayal. Sweetheart, I said, I'm going to tell you the truth, but you have to listen all the way through, okay? She nodded, but she looked like she might fall. Caleb put an arm around her. The man in the suit cleared his throat, like he was deciding whether to let me speak or do his job. Then he said, 5 minutes, then we step outside. Richard looked like he wanted to run. He couldn't. Not now. Not with everyone watching. So I started, right there in the middle of the ballroom. Most of you don't know me, I said, letting my voice carry. I'm Evelyn. I raised my daughter alone, and for years I kept my head down because I was busy working, surviving, and protecting my child. People stared. Some looked uncomfortable, like they wanted this to go back to dancing and dessert. But life doesn't care about your schedule. I worked at a welding shop, I continued. I learned how to keep my hands steady even when my heart was breaking, and I learned something else too, something even more important. I looked at Richard. Some men wear suits and smiles, I said, and they talk like they're better than everyone, but when you scratch the surface you find rust. Richard's eyes flicked to the exits again. Mia whispered, Mom, please, what does this have to do with him? It has everything to do with him, I said gently, because years ago, before Caleb even met you, Richard Harlan crossed paths with me in a way he never expected. Caleb frowned, confused. My dad never mentioned you. Of course he didn't, I said, because he wanted you to believe he built his life clean. Richard finally raised the microphone again, trying to take control. Don't listen to her, he snapped. She's jealous, she's trying to ruin today because she's bitter. A few guests shifted, like they wanted to believe him because it was easier. But the man in the suit didn't move. He just watched Richard like he'd watched a lot of men like him. I turned to the crowd again. I'm not bitter, I said. I'm tired of watching powerful people step on others just because they can. Then I looked directly at Mia. Mia, do you remember my friend from the shop, Mr. Frank? Her brow wrinkled. The older guy who always gave me candy when I visited. I nodded, yes, Frank Dalton. Caleb blinked, wait, Frank Dalton, like Dalton Steel. A hush fell. Because Dalton Steel wasn't just a shop name. It was a big supplier, a company people in our city knew. I kept my voice calm. Frank was my mentor, he taught me welding. He also taught me how to spot shady deals. He was honest and he believed in doing things the right way. Richard's jaw clenched. And suddenly I saw it in his eyes. He knew what name was coming next. Years ago, I said, Frank discovered someone had been moving money around in his business. Not a small mistake, a plan, a theft dressed up like paperwork. Mia's mouth opened. Mom. Frank didn't want to believe it, I said. He was the kind of man who trusted people until they gave him a reason not to, but the numbers didn't lie, orders missing, accounts changed, records that didn't match. I paused. Then I said the part that made Richard's shoulders stiffen like a board. The person Frank suspected was a young consultant who worked with one of his partners. Richard shook his head hard, like he could shake the truth out of the air. That's ridiculous, he said. I don't even know what she's talking about. I didn't even look at him. I looked at Caleb. Caleb, I asked, did your father ever tell you how he got his start? How he went from nothing to Harlan Wealth Group? Caleb swallowed. He said he worked hard. He said he made smart investments. I nodded slowly. He did work hard in a way. He worked hard to build a story, but the truth is he didn't start with clean money. Mia turned pale. Mom, stop, are you saying? I'm saying your father-in-law didn't build everything from scratch, I said. He took a shortcut through someone else's life. Richard laughed again, louder this time, but it sounded shaky. This is insane, you have no proof. But that was when I reached into my purse. And yes, I brought my purse to my own daughter's wedding. Because when your instincts warn you, you listen. I pulled out a small, flat envelope. The kind that looks boring until you realize what it holds. I do have proof, I said. Richard's eyes snapped to the envelope. The man in the suit straightened slightly. Guests leaned forward. Mia whispered, Mom, what is that? I looked at her and my voice softened. It's something I kept, I said, because I promised Frank I would. Then I turned to Caleb again. Frank Dalton is not alive anymore, I said quietly. He passed away last year. Mia gasped, "Oh my gosh." But before he died, I continued, he handed me copies of documents he never got to finish using. He said, "Evelyn, if anything happens to me, and if you ever see that man again, you make sure my truth doesn't die with me." Richard's face wasn't just pale now. It looked stretched, like the skin didn't fit anymore. Caleb's voice came out small. "Dad, what is she talking about?" Richard's eyes darted to Caleb. And for a split second, I saw something I didn't expect. Fear, yes, but also anger at his own son, like Caleb was a problem for asking questions. That told me everything I needed to know about what kind of father Richard really was. I held the envelope up. "This has copies of contracts, account transfers, and one very important letter." Richard sneered, "You could have forged anything." I nodded. "That's what you're hoping everyone believes." Then I looked at the man in the suit. "You're with the State Financial Crimes Unit, aren't you?" I asked. His eyes flicked to me, surprised. He didn't confirm it out loud, but he didn't deny it either. That was enough. I turned back to the crowd. "Richard Harlan isn't afraid of my words," I said. "He's afraid of paper, because paper doesn't care how rich you are." Richard suddenly stepped toward me, voice low and sharp. "You need to stop." I held my ground. "Or what?" I asked, calm. "You'll insult me again." His lips curled. Then he said something so quiet only I, Mia, Caleb, and the man in the suit could hear. "You don't understand what you're doing," Richard whispered. "You're putting your daughter in danger." That sentence hit me like cold water. Because it wasn't a warning out of love. It was a threat wrapped in fake concern. My heart pounded, but my face stayed still. "What did you just say?" I asked, steady. Richard's eyes were wild. "I said you don't understand. There are people connected to me, people you don't want to mess with." Caleb stared at him like he didn't recognize him. "Dad, what is wrong with you?" Mia grabbed my hand, trembling. "Mom." I squeezed her hand and leaned closer to her ear. "Listen to me," I whispered. "You stay beside Caleb, you don't go anywhere alone tonight, understand?" Her eyes widened. "Mom, why?" "Because I think your father-in-law has been lying about more than money," I whispered. Then I lifted my head and spoke clearly again. "Richard," I said, "you don't get to threaten my child after insulting me." Richard tried to smile like he was still the host, but his face kept twitching. The man in the suit stepped between us slightly. "That's enough," he said, firm. "Richard Harlan, you're coming with me." Richard snapped, "Not without my lawyer." "You can call whoever you want," the man replied, "but you're stepping outside now." Richard looked around, desperate for control. Then he did something that made my stomach drop. He turned to Caleb and said, loud enough for the crowd to hear, "Son, tell them this is a misunderstanding. Tell them your wife's mother is unstable." Caleb's mouth fell open. "Dad, no." Richard's voice rose. "Caleb, do it, protect this family." Caleb stood taller, shaking but solid. "The family I'm protecting is Mia," he said, "not your lies." A few guests gasped. Mia started crying, silent tears sliding down her cheeks. And in that moment I was proud of Caleb. Because he had just chosen love over fear. The man in the suit gestured toward the doors. "Now." Richard took one step, then stopped. He looked at me one last time. And he said, too softly for most people to catch, "If you open that envelope, you won't like what comes after." Then he turned and walked toward the doors with the man in the suit. The room erupted into noise. People whispered, stood up, pulled out phones. The wedding coordinator looked like she might faint. Mia clung to Caleb like she was holding onto the only steady thing left. I leaned close to Mia and said, "Baby, look at me." She met my eyes. "I need you to trust me," I said. "I didn't want this at your wedding, but Richard forced it." Mia shook her head, tears falling faster. "I feel like I can't breathe." "I know," I said, "but you're safe. We're going to make sure you're safe." Caleb's voice was tight. "Evelyn, what else is in that envelope?" I stared at the doors Richard had walked through. Then I answered plainly because they deserved the truth. "There's more than financial stuff," I said. There's a name in there Richard never wanted connected to him, a man Frank believed was the real muscle behind the theft. Caleb swallowed. Muscle. I nodded. A fixer, someone who scares people into silence. Mia's eyes widened. Mom, are you saying Richard is? I'm saying Richard may have been part of something bigger than just stealing, I said carefully, and that's why he's so scared right now. Mia shook her head like she wanted to wake up. Caleb whispered, we need to leave. I looked around. The guests were still buzzing, and the doors to the hallway were open, and people kept peeking out like they were watching a show. And that's when I noticed something else. Near the back of the room, a man I didn't recognize was standing very still. He wasn't dressed like a guest. No tux, no boutonniere. Just a plain suit, like he could blend in anywhere. He wasn't looking at Richard anymore. Richard was gone. This man was looking at me. Not curious. Not shocked. Focused. Like he was counting my breaths. My stomach tightened. I leaned toward Caleb and Mia and said quietly, we're not leaving through the main doors. Caleb frowned. Why? I didn't answer with drama. I answered with the truth. Because I think someone else came here for Richard, I whispered, and now he's watching us. Mia clutched Caleb's arm. Mom, I'm scared. I kept my voice calm. Stay close, I said, both of you. Then, because I knew people listening might feel their own hearts racing right now, I'm going to say this softly, like I'd say it to a friend. If you're with us in this story, tap like, and leave a comment telling us where you're listening from. It helps more than you think. And if you want the next part the moment it drops, subscribe, because what happens after this is where the real danger shows up. I turned my body slightly, still holding my purse with the envelope inside. The man at the back took one slow step forward. Then another. And in his hand, down by his side, I saw a phone screen light up. A message flashed bright and quick. I couldn't read all of it, but I caught 2 words that made my blood run cold. Grab Evelyn's. My grip tightened on my purse. Caleb noticed my face change. What? He whispered. I didn't yell. I didn't run. I did what I'd done my whole life. I made a plan in a heartbeat. I leaned close and whispered, we're going out the service hallway, now. Mia nodded, trembling. Caleb took her hand. I turned us slightly, moving like we were just stepping away to breathe. But the man started moving faster. And when I glanced toward the side door, I saw the wedding coordinator standing there with her hands up, eyes wide, whispering, oh no. Because 2 more men had just appeared in the hallway. And they were blocking the exit. The side hallway felt suddenly smaller, like the walls had moved in just to squeeze us. 2 men stood there, blocking the service exit, both in plain suits, both wearing that empty look people wear when they have decided you are not a person, you are a task. Behind us, the man from the back of the ballroom was closing the distance, walking faster now, not even trying to blend in anymore. Caleb's hand tightened around Mia's. Mia whispered, Mom, please tell me this isn't real. I kept my voice low and steady, because fear loves loud voices, and I wasn't going to feed it. It's real, I said, but we're still okay, we're still together. Caleb's eyes darted left and right. Who are they? What do they want? I didn't sugarcoat it. They want my purse, I said. They want what's inside. Mia's breath caught, the envelope. I nodded once, yes. Caleb's jaw clenched. This is because of my dad. Partly, I said, but it's also because of what your dad was connected to. The wedding coordinator. A young woman with a headset and panic in her eyes lifted her hands like she wanted to help but didn't know how. I can call security, she whispered. Do it, I said, now, and call the police and tell them it's an emergency. She nodded hard and backed away, fumbling for her phone. The 2 men in the hallway didn't move. They just watched us, waiting. The man behind us took another step closer and said quietly, like he was offering directions, Ma'am, you should come with us. Caleb snapped back up. The man didn't even blink. This doesn't concern you. Caleb raised his chin. It concerns my wife. Mia's eyes filled again, but she wasn't falling apart. She was listening. She was learning. She was watching the way I was watching. And I felt that familiar thing rise in my chest, the thing that carried me through years of doing everything alone. Protective love. The kind that becomes steel. I took one slow step forward and spoke in a calm tone, like I was talking to a stubborn customer at a store. Let's not be stupid, I said to the men blocking the door. This is a wedding, there are cameras, there are witnesses, you can walk away. One of the men smiled, small and cold. We're not here to hurt anybody, he said. We just need what you have. That's funny, I replied, because I don't remember borrowing anything from you. The man behind us sighed like I was wasting his time. Give us the envelope and you can go back inside. We'll all forget this happened. Mia grabbed my sleeve. Mom, please just give it to them. Her voice cracked, and my heart squeezed because she was scared, but she was also thinking like a daughter who didn't want her mother to get hurt. I turned toward her and touched her cheek, gentle, quick. Baby, I said softly, I understand why you want that, but listen to me. If we give them what they want, they won't suddenly become kind people. They'll just learn that fear works. Caleb swallowed. Then what do we do? I looked past them down the hallway and noticed something important. A metal cart leaned against the wall, the kind the staff uses for plates and linens. Big wheels, heavy frame. A small door on the left side, labeled storage, slightly open. A blinking green sign above another doorway that said fire exit, but it was farther down, past the two men. And I realized something else. These men were confident, but not smart enough to cover every angle. They were focused on one thing. My purse. My envelope. And that focus could be used against them. I leaned close to Caleb and Mia and whispered, when I say move, you both run into that storage room. Lock it if you can. Stay quiet, understand? Mia's eyes widened. No, I'm not leaving you. Caleb shook his head too. I'm not leaving you. I looked at them both, firm now. You are leaving, I said. Because if they want me, it's because I'm the only one who can prove something. You two are the reason I'm doing any of this, and I won't let you be used as pressure. Mia's lip trembled. Mom. I lowered my voice even more. Trust me, just this once, trust me without arguing. Caleb nodded slowly. Mia nodded after him, tears sliding down, but she nodded. The man blocking the hallway took one step forward, impatient. Last chance, he said. I did something that surprised even me. I smiled. Not a happy smile. A calm smile. Because I had learned something about bullies and important men who use threats. They hate when you don't act scared. I raised my purse slightly. You want this? All three men's attention locked onto it. Give it, the man behind us said. I took another step forward, and I held the purse out like I was surrendering. Their shoulders loosened, just a little. And that tiny loosening was all I needed. I swung the purse hard, not at anyone's face, not like a fight scene, but at the metal cart's handle, smashing it so the cart rolled forward with a loud rattle. The cart slammed into the legs of the nearest man, bumping him back enough to make space. At the same time I snapped, move. Caleb grabbed Mia's hand and pulled her into the storage room. The door banged open, then shut fast. The man behind me cursed under his breath, reaching forward. I twisted away, slipping past the gap the cart made, and I ran the other direction down the hallway toward the fire exit. My lungs burned, but my mind stayed sharp. Behind me, shoes pounded. A hand grabbed for my shoulder and missed. I heard the storage room door rattle, like someone was testing it. I didn't turn around. I kept going. Because the moment you look back is the moment you slow down. And slowing down was not an option. I reached the fire exit and shoved it open. Cold night air hit my face like a slap. Outside, behind the venue, was a narrow service area with dumpsters, delivery vans, and bright security lights that made everything look harsh and exposed. I ran toward the nearest van, not because I wanted to hide behind it forever, but because I needed a second. A moment to think. My hands shook as I dug into my purse. The envelope was still there. Good. Then I heard a voice behind me. Not one of the men. A different voice. Evelyn. I spun. An older man stepped into the light, holding his hands up like he didn't want to scare me. He wore a simple jacket, and his hair was grey, and his eyes were wide with concern. For one wild second, I thought it might be Frank. But Frank was gone. This man looked like him though, same kind of face, same steady presence. Who are you? I demanded. He swallowed. My name is Thomas Dalton. Dalton. My stomach tightened. Frank's brother, he said quickly. I've been trying to reach you. My grip on my purse tightened. How do I know that? I asked. He nodded like he expected the question. Because Frank kept a box, Thomas said. A box of copies, and a letter he wrote to you. He told me if anything happened at a public event, if Richard Harlan ever showed his face near you again, I should come. My heart pounded. So you came to my daughter's wedding? I asked. Thomas's face crumpled with regret. I didn't want to, but I got word that investigators were moving today. I got scared someone would try to silence you. My breath caught. Before I could respond, a harsh voice cut through the air. There she is. Two of the men stepped out of the door behind me, scanning the service area like hunters. Thomas's eyes widened. Oh no. I backed up slightly, keeping the van between us and them. Thomas whispered, Evelyn, you need to give me the envelope. I stared at him. Why? Because if they grab you, he said, they'll grab it anyway. But if you hand it to me, I can run it straight to the investigator outside. They have a unit parked near the front. His voice sounded real. But fear makes everyone suspicious. I shook my head. I don't trust anyone right now. Thomas nodded fast. Then don't trust me, trust this. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn at the edges. He opened it carefully and held it toward me. It was Frank's handwriting. I knew it immediately. Frank's letters were neat and blocky, like he wrote the way he welded, steady and deliberate. My eyes scanned the first line. Evelyn, if you're reading this, it means the truth finally stepped into the light. My throat tightened. Thomas stepped closer, still holding the paper out. I'm not here to take it from you, he said. I'm here to help you finish what Frank started. The men were getting closer now, circling around the van. One called out, Ma'am, stop running, you're making this worse. I whispered to Thomas, where is Mia, where is Caleb? Thomas looked torn. I don't know, I came out when I heard yelling and I saw you run, I followed. My stomach dropped. Because Mia and Caleb were still inside. In that storage room. With people trying the door. I couldn't breathe for a second. I forced air into my lungs and made myself think. Okay, I whispered, okay. Then I made a decision. A hard one. The kind mothers make when there's no perfect choice. I pulled the envelope out, stared at it for one heartbeat, and then I tore it open right there. Paper slid into my hand. Copies of transfers, contracts, and a letter with a bold header. But the last page was the one that mattered most. It had a name typed in the middle. A name Frank had circled in thick ink. Mia and Caleb deserved safety, and safety starts with truth. I looked at the circled name and felt my body go cold. Because I recognized it. Not from gossip. Not from TV. From my own life. From years ago. From the day Mia's father disappeared. The circled name was the same name that had been whispered to me back then, when I was told, don't ask questions. Thomas saw my face change. What, he asked urgent, what does it say? I couldn't even answer yet. The men stepped around the van at the same time, closing in from both sides. And the one in front lifted his phone and spoke into it like he was reporting. She opened it, he said. She knows the name. My blood roared in my ears. Because now it was not just about Richard Harlan. It was bigger. It was older. And it was connected to the one wound I never fully understood. My daughter's father. Thomas grabbed my arm gently. Evelyn, we need to move now. I heard sirens far away, faint but coming. Inside the building, I heard a muffled scream. A woman's scream. And I knew that voice. Mia. My entire body turned to fire. I spun toward the door, and the men stepped in front of me. Not so fast, one said, calm as if he were stopping someone from cutting a line. I held the papers tight in my fist and stared at him. If my daughter gets hurt, I said, voice low and shaking with rage, you will regret waking up today. He didn't care. He just reached for my purse. And in that moment, with Mia screaming inside, with sirens getting closer, with the truth finally in my hands, I realized the real battle was not in the ballroom. It was in the next 30 seconds. And I had to choose. Do I chase my daughter, or do I get these papers to the police before they disappear forever? Because I couldn't do both. And whichever choice I made would change our lives. Mia's scream ripped through the building again, and it went straight through my chest like a sharp alarm. There are moments when a mother doesn't think, she just moves. That was one of them. I clutched the papers in my fist, looked at the two men blocking me, and said in a voice so calm it surprised even me, "You picked the wrong family." One of them reached for my purse again, his hand quick and greedy. I stepped back, raised my knee, and kicked the side of the dumpster lid beside me, not to hurt anybody, but to make noise, loud metal noise that echoed through the service area. It worked. A security guard rounded the corner near the loading dock, flashlight bouncing, shouting, "Hey, what's going on back here?" The two men froze for a half-second, like they had not expected witnesses in the back. Thomas Dalton grabbed my elbow. "Now," he whispered. I didn't hesitate. I bolted toward the fire exit door with Thomas right beside me. The guard started walking faster, flashlight aimed at the men, yelling, "Stop right there." Behind us I heard footsteps, fast and angry. We slammed through the fire exit and rushed back into the hallway. The lights inside felt too bright now, like the building was exposing everything. I ran toward the storage room. The door handle was shaking. Someone was pulling it, testing it hard. "Mia," I yelled. "Mom," Mia cried back, her voice breaking. Caleb's voice came next, tight and strained. "They're trying to get in." My whole body went cold and hot at the same time. I turned my head and saw one of the men from earlier in the hallway already inside, closer now, walking toward the storage room with that same empty stare. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't panicking. He looked like he had done this before. Thomas whispered, "Evelyn, give me the papers. I'll run them to the investigator." I looked at the storage room door shaking, then at the man coming toward us, then at the papers in my hand. This was the choice again. My daughter or the truth. I swallowed hard and did the only thing that made sense. I split the truth. I tore the papers into two piles fast. I shoved the contracts and transfers into Thomas's hands, then kept the last page, the one with the circled name, pressed against my palm like it was my heartbeat. "Go," I said. Thomas hesitated. "Evelyn." "Go," I repeated, firm. "Take those to the investigator. Tell them Richard Harlan wasn't working alone." Thomas nodded once, then ran down the hallway, disappearing around the corner. The man approaching us sped up. He saw Thomas run and his face changed. Not panic. Annoyance. Like a plan was slipping. He pointed at me and said into his phone, "She kept one page." I turned and slammed my shoulder into the storage room door. "Caleb," I shouted, "move away from the door." "I'm right here," Caleb yelled. I twisted the handle hard, pulling. The door cracked open just enough for a hand to reach through. Caleb pulled it from inside. Mia stumbled out first, her dress bunched up in her fists, her mascara streaked, her face terrified. Right behind her was Caleb, and his tux jacket was rumpled like someone had grabbed him. He wrapped an arm around Mia, shielding her. "What happened?" I demanded. Caleb's voice was shaking with anger. "Someone tried to force the door. They said, 'Give us Evelyn's purse.' Mia looked at me like she was drowning. Mom, why are people hunting you at my wedding? I grabbed her face gently with both hands. Because your father-in-law has been playing dirty for a long time, I said, and he has friends who don't want the truth. The man in the hallway took another step closer, and now I could see him clearly. He was older than the others, his hair was neat, his suit was plain but expensive, his eyes were flat like nothing touched him. He smiled at me like we were having a polite chat. Mrs. Carter, he said, using my last name like he knew me well, you're causing a scene. I stared at him. Who are you? He gave a small shrug. Let's just say I clean up messes. Caleb stepped forward. Back up now. The man looked at Caleb like Caleb was a child, standing in front of a storm. This is not your problem, the man said. Mia's voice cracked. It is our problem, you tried to break into a room. The man's smile didn't change. No, he said smoothly, I tried to protect a family from embarrassment. I felt my stomach turn. He was a liar with a calm voice. Those are the dangerous ones. I held Mia and Caleb closer behind me and asked, Are you the name on the paper? The man's eyes flicked to my hand. To the page I was holding. Then he looked at my face again and smiled a little wider. That depends, he said. Did Frank Dalton tell you to be brave, Evelyn, or did he tell you to be smart? My blood went cold. He knew Frank. He knew me. He knew too much. Caleb whispered, Evelyn, the police, where are they? I listened. The sirens outside were louder now. Closer. But not here yet. And I knew something else too. A lot can happen in 30 seconds when someone wants to disappear. The man took one more step forward. I held my ground. Say your name, I demanded. He sighed like he was tired of pretending. Victor Crane, he said calmly. Mia blinked. Who is that? My throat tightened because that name wasn't new to me. It was old. It was the kind of name you hear once, and it stays in your bones. I stared at Victor and said, You're the one. Victor's smile stayed in place, but his eyes sharpened. You remember, he said. I remember the day my daughter's father vanished, I said, my voice low, steady, dangerous. And I remember a woman warning me not to ask questions. She whispered one name, yours. Mia's mouth dropped open. Dad, she whispered, my dad. I turned to her and I spoke slowly, clearly, because she deserved truth, not hints. Mia, your father's name is Jason Carter, I said. He left, but not the way you were told. Mia looked like her knees might give out. Caleb tightened his hold on her. Victor lifted his hand slightly like he was calming a crowd. Let's not rewrite history, he said. Jason made choices. I snapped, you don't get to talk about him like he was your friend. Victor's smile faded for the first time. Evelyn, he said, you are still doing what you always do. You keep pushing until something breaks. I stepped closer. Tell me what you did, I said. Tell my daughter the truth. Victor's eyes flicked to Mia, then back to me. He didn't look guilty. He looked bored. Richard Harlan wanted money, Victor said. He wanted a fast ladder. Frank Dalton was in the way, so Richard played both sides. He stole through contracts and fake vendors, and he blamed it on errors and bad management. Caleb's face twisted in disbelief. My dad stole. Victor shrugged. Your father is good at smiling, bad at patience. Mia whispered, then why are you here? Victor's voice stayed calm. Because Richard didn't do it alone. Richard needed someone who could scare people into staying quiet. Mia's eyes widened. You. Victor nodded once. Me. My hands shook, but my voice stayed clear. And Jason, I asked, what did you do to Jason? Victor stared at me for a long moment. Then he said the truth like it was nothing. Jason found something, Victor said. He wasn't supposed to see it. He worked near the welding shop sometimes, took small jobs, asked too many questions. Frank noticed, Jason noticed, people notice and then they become problems. Mia choked on a breath. My dad was at your shop. I nodded at her quickly. Yes, I said. He did weekend work, he loved building things, he was proud of his hands. Mia covered her mouth, crying, "You never told me." "I was trying to protect you from pain," I said, voice thick. "But keeping you in the dark also hurt you, and I see that now." Victor continued, still calm, still cold. "Jason refused to stay quiet," he said. "He threatened to go to the police." My chest tightened. "So you threatened him?" Victor didn't deny it. "I warned him," he said. "He didn't listen." Mia's voice rose, trembling. "What did you do to him?" Victor looked at her like she was asking about the weather. "We didn't harm him," Victor said. "We scared him, we cornered him. We made him believe if he stayed you would suffer." Mia sobbed, "No." Victor tilted his head. "He left to protect you," Victor said. "He took a bus out of state that same night. He called once but you never answered." My heart stopped. I stared at him. "That's a lie." Victor's eyes slid to me. "Check your memory," he said softly. "You were exhausted working, raising a baby. A missed call looks like nothing until it's everything." My breath came out shaky. Because I did remember a night like that. A night when my phone rang while Mia was crying, and I was trying to warm a bottle, and I let it go to voicemail because I couldn't keep up. I never checked the voicemail. Back then, I was surviving minute to minute. Mia stared at me through tears. "Mom, is that true?" My voice broke. "I don't know," I whispered. "I don't know, baby." Victor stepped closer again, eyes on the page in my hand. "Now," he said, "hand me that last page." Caleb moved forward, protective. "No." Victor's gaze sharpened. "Young man, you don't understand. If that page gets into evidence, it links my name to Richard, and Richard will sing like a bird to save himself, and then other people will panic." He leaned closer, voice dropping low. "And when powerful people panic, they hurt whoever is nearby." Mia clutched Caleb, shaking. I looked down at the page. The circled name. Victor Crane. I looked up and asked, "If you didn't harm Jason, where is he now?" Victor's lips pressed together. For the first time he hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. He knew more. He was holding something back. Sirens wailed louder. Then finally I heard running footsteps and voices. "Police, put your hands up." Victor's eyes flicked toward the sound. His calm mask cracked just a little. He reached for me. Not gently. Quickly. And in the same moment, Caleb stepped in front of Mia, and I pulled Mia behind me, and the hallway exploded into chaos. I heard shouting. I saw a flash of blue lights through a nearby window. Victor's hand grabbed my wrist. His grip was hard. And he whispered right in my ear, "If you want your daughter safe, you'll give me that page." My heart hammered. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I made a choice. I lifted the page, stared him in the eyes and said, "You're not taking anything from me again." Then I did the one thing he didn't expect. I shoved the page into my mouth and swallowed it, crumpling it as much as I could as it went down, because I would rather destroy the paper than let him control the truth. Victor's eyes went wide, shocked for the first time. "What did you do?" he snapped. I coughed, my throat burning, but I kept my eyes on his. "I kept it from you," I rasped. Police voices thundered closer. Victor released my wrist and backed away fast, scanning for an exit. And right then, as officers stormed into the hallway and grabbed the two other men, Victor did something that made my stomach drop. He didn't run toward the doors. He lunged toward Mia. Mia screamed. Caleb shouted, "MIA." And I threw myself forward without thinking, my hands reaching for my daughter as Victor's arm wrapped around her shoulders, dragging her backward, using her like a shield as he moved toward the nearest exit. All I could see was Mia's terrified face, her white dress twisting, her hands reaching for me. And Victor's voice calm again, cold again, as he pulled her away. "You want answers, Evelyn," he said, "then come get them." And the last thing I heard before they disappeared through the side door was Mia sobbing my name like she was a little girl again. "Mom." The world narrowed down to one thing, my daughter's voice, and the way it cracked when she screamed, "Mom." Victor Crane dragged Mia through the side door like he owned the hallway, like this was just another mess he planned to clean up. But this time he forgot one important thing. Mia was not a little girl anymore. And I was not the kind of mother who freezes. I ran after them, not wild, not sloppy, but focused, like every step had a purpose. Caleb was right behind me, shouting Mia's name, and the sound of police boots hit the hallway like thunder. "Stop," an officer yelled. Victor didn't stop. He pushed the door open and pulled Mia into the cold night air behind the venue, into the service lane with the bright lights, the delivery vans, and the dumpsters. The moment we burst outside, Mia did something that made my heart leap. She stomped down hard on Victor's foot. Victor jerked in pain, and she threw her elbow back, right into his stomach. It wasn't a perfect hit, but it was enough to make him loosen his grip for half a second. That half a second was a gift. Mia slipped out of his arm and ran straight toward me, dress lifting, shoes slipping, tears flying. I caught her. I wrapped both arms around her tight, like I could seal her back into safety. Caleb reached us too, and he put his body between us and Victor without even thinking. Victor's face was twisted now, not calm, not smooth, just angry that the plan didn't obey him. Two officers rushed outside with their flashlights. One aimed a bright light straight at Victor. "Hands up," the officer shouted. Victor didn't raise his hands right away. He looked around, checking exits, looking for a way to melt away into the dark, but the service lane was lit up like daytime. He lifted his palms slowly, like he was insulted to be told what to do. Then the officer stepped closer, firm and loud. "Turn around now." Victor hesitated, just long enough to show everyone who he really was. Then he turned. The officers moved fast, handcuffs clicked. And the moment I saw those cuffs lock, my knees almost gave out. Mia clung to me shaking. "Mom, I was so scared." I kissed the top of her head over and over. "I know, baby, I know you're safe now." Caleb's voice was tight, full of shock and fury. "This is insane, this is my wedding." I looked at him, and for the first time I saw the little boy inside him, the one who wanted his father to be good. "I'm sorry," I said. "I tried to keep this away from you both." An officer spoke into his radio, quick and clear. "We have one suspect in custody, possible accomplices detained inside. Request backup." Mia pulled back just enough to look at me. Her eyes were red and her voice was small. "Mom, tell me the truth, all of it, no more pieces." I swallowed. My throat still burned from what I did in the hallway, and my heart still felt like it was running. "I will," I promised, "every single part." Inside the building, the noise of the reception had changed. It wasn't music and laughter anymore. It was confusion, shouting, crying, and 100 people trying to understand why a wedding turned into a storm. The officer guided Victor toward a patrol car near the front, and as he passed me, Victor turned his head slightly. His eyes met mine, and he said, quiet, flat, like he was reading a bill, "You can't swallow a truth forever." I stepped closer, careful but steady. "No," I said, "but I can keep it from you long enough for justice to catch up." He stared at me for a second, then looked away, like he was annoyed I still had a voice. The officer put him in the car and shut the door. That sound, the solid thud of the door closing, felt like the first deep breath I'd taken in years. A few minutes later, Thomas Dalton came running from the front lot, breathless, clutching his jacket. "Evelyn," he called, "are you okay?" I nodded. "Mia's safe." Thomas's shoulders dropped with relief. "Good, good." Caleb stared at Thomas. "You're the Daltons." Thomas nodded. "Frank was my brother." Mia wiped her face with shaking fingers. "You knew my mom." Thomas looked at her gently. "I knew she was brave. Frank talked about her like she was family." Mia's eyes filled again, but this time it wasn't just fear. It was grief and confusion, and something like anger at the years she didn't understand. I held Mia's hand and finally said the part I owed her. "Years ago, Frank found proof that Richard Harlan was stealing," I said. "Not small stuff, a whole plan, fake vendors. Fake invoices, money moved around like smoke." Caleb's face went pale. "My dad stole money from Frank's company." Thomas nodded, jaw clenched. Frank confronted Richard. Richard denied it, then tried to blame other people, then tried to bury it. Frank started collecting proof. Mia whispered, and Victor Crane helped him. Yes, I said. Victor was the muscle, the pressure, the threat behind the polite smiles. Caleb's voice broke. Why would my father do that? We weren't poor. I looked at Caleb kindly, because he deserved clarity, not cruelty. Richard wasn't stealing to survive, I said. He was stealing to grow fast. He wanted a bigger name, a bigger lifestyle, a bigger story. He wanted people to fear him and admire him at the same time. Thomas added, and once you steal and get away with it, you don't stop easily. You start believing you deserve it. Mia's fingers tightened around mine. And my dad, Jason, where does he fit? My chest squeezed. This was the hardest part. Mia, I said softly, your father didn't leave because he didn't love you. Her eyes widened, and I saw a piece of her heart crack open. He worked around the shop sometimes, I continued. He liked welding and building things, and he was proud of honest work. One day he saw something he wasn't supposed to see, papers, a meeting, money talk. He told me he felt like something was wrong. Mia's voice shook. Why didn't you tell me that? Because I was scared, I admitted plainly. I was young and I was alone and I didn't know how big it was. I thought if I stayed quiet and focused on you, the danger would pass us by. Thomas spoke gently. Frank said Jason was a decent man. I nodded. Jason wanted to report it. Victor and Richard didn't want that. Victor threatened him, and Victor used the one thing that could make Jason fold you. Mia started crying again, but she didn't look away. She stayed with the truth. Victor told us tonight that Jason left to protect us, I said. I believe that part. I believe he thought leaving was the only way to keep you safe. Caleb asked, so where is he now? I took a breath. I didn't know for years, but Frank gave me something else, something he found later. Thomas reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out another envelope, sealed, official-looking. I gave the investigator everything I had, Thomas said, but there was one item Frank asked me to keep until you were ready, Evelyn. My hands trembled as I took it. On the front, in Frank's handwriting, it said, for Mia when the truth is safe. Mia stared at it like it might explode. I opened it carefully. Inside was a printed page with an address, a phone number, and a note. Frank's note was short, but it was enough. It explained that Frank had found Jason years later through a quiet search, and that Jason had been living under a different last name in another state, working small jobs, keeping his head down, sending money orders that never reached us because they were intercepted before they got to my mailbox. Mia's mouth fell open. Intercepted. Thomas nodded sadly. Frank believed Victor had someone watching the mail routes back then. It wasn't hard. They didn't need to be everywhere, just in the right places. Mia covered her mouth, sobbing. So my dad tried. I pulled her into my chest again. Yes, I whispered, he tried. Caleb's voice was thick. Is he alive? I looked at Thomas, and Thomas nodded. The investigator confirmed it tonight, Thomas said. Jason is alive. They have a current contact record. And now that Victor is in custody and Richard is in custody, the fear wall is cracking. Mia looked up at me with wet eyes. Mom, can I talk to him? I swallowed hard. If you want to, yes, and we'll do it safely, with support, with people who can protect you. Mia nodded again and again, like her whole world was turning but not breaking. Behind us, more officers escorted Richard Harlan out of the building. He didn't look powerful anymore. He looked small, angry, and cornered. Caleb stared at his father like he was seeing him for the first time. Richard tried to speak. Caleb, listen to me, this is... Caleb's voice cut him off, sharp and clear. Don't say another word. Richard's face twisted. You're choosing her over your own blood. Caleb stepped closer, voice trembling but strong. I'm choosing the truth. I'm choosing my wife. And if you were a real father, you'd be ashamed. Richard opened his mouth. No words came out that could fix anything. The officer guided him into a car. Mia whispered, he tried to humiliate you to control us. I nodded. Yes, that's what he does. He makes people feel small so they won't ask questions. Mia looked at me, eyes fierce through tears. I'm done being small. I smiled, a real one this time, even with my face wet. That's my girl. Over the next hour, statements were taken. The officers told us Victor's men were being held, and the investigator confirmed that Thomas's documents were enough to open a full case. Richard's business accounts would be examined, his partners would be interviewed, and Victor Crane would finally be connected to the threats that kept people silent for years. Caleb held Mia's hand the whole time, and I watched him quietly, because love is not just sweet words, love is what you do when everything falls apart. When we finally sat in a quiet side room, away from cameras and whispers, Mia leaned into me and whispered, "Mom, why did you wait so long to speak up?" "I didn't dodge it. Because I thought silence kept us safe," I said, "but silence also kept the wrong people powerful, and it kept you from the truth you deserved." Mia nodded slowly, absorbing it. Caleb looked at me. "You stood up for her, for both of us." I nodded. "That's what mothers do, and grandmas too." Mia gave a shaky laugh through tears. "Grandma, revenge at my wedding." I laughed too, and it sounded weird in the middle of all that pain, but it also felt like air returning to our lungs. Later, after the police left and the guests were sent home, Mia and Caleb stood in the empty ballroom, still in their wedding clothes, surrounded by half-melted candles and abandoned plates. Mia looked at Caleb and said, "I still want to be your wife." Caleb's eyes filled. "I still want to be your husband." They held each other, and that moment, simple and real, felt like the wedding they deserved. Before we left, Mia turned to me and said, "When I talk to my dad, will you be there?" "Yes," I told her, "every step." And that's the lesson that sat in my chest as we walked out into the early morning air. Trust your instincts. Silence can feel safe, but it can also be a cage. And courage doesn't always look like yelling. Sometimes it looks like standing up in a room full of people and saying, "Do you even know who I am?" Because when you know who you are and you refuse to be shamed, the truth finally has somewhere to stand. If you made it to the end with us, thank you for listening. Please like, comment where you're listening from, and subscribe, because stories like this remind us we are not powerless, not when we choose courage, and not when we choose each other.